Guys, welcome to the Jeff Richards Show. My name is Jayson Thibault. My friends call me the T, and that includes you. Today I'm filling in for Jeff, and I'm very excited for our guest today, world-renowned, best-selling author, Jordan Peterson. Jordan, how are you doing today? And thanks for doing Jeff's show.
I'm doing fine, and I feel good, and I think you're good when you do good, and when you eat meat. Not to get into this right away, but it's something I feel very passionate about, which is meat. You know, you can eat it every day, and I do. I eat it with sparkling water, and I enjoy it very much. It gives me energy. It also gives me a coarseness that I have right now, and I appreciate it. And I just want to be able to push out meat as much as I can. And I say push out, I mean take it in and push it out
Yep.
into the toilet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole push out. Now, you're a big proponent of meat eating. You're not very much into the veganism, vegetarianism. What benefits do you get as a clinical psychiatrist, psychologist, well renowned in the medical world? What are the benefits of eating meat versus just going, I'm not a big meat eater?
Well, you don't need anything else. I think that's the real realization. Is that when, primitive caveman, he didn't have whole foods. He didn't have, Planters peanuts. He just had, this divine right to eat what he could, and that is to find animals and to be able to eat them, and eat them quite quickly. And they do, and people do, and they continue to.
Yeah,
It's a fundamental difference between eating a delicious tart caramel goodie wrapped in a plastic little just a little piece of plastic shit. There's an indifference to it.
now,
It's a fundamental indifference.
and I do understand that. Are there any animals that are kind of off limits for you? Is there any animal that you wouldn't eat or find delicious?
Well, I wouldn't eat an ant. I wouldn't eat a snake. I wouldn't eat a snake if it was alive. These are the things that people forget about. I mean, this is the narrative that people usually fall down with. They have this divine, this divine prowess over things like a monkey. Would you eat a monkey? Well, I'd eat one arm,
Yeah,
but I don't eat a lot.
right.
I'd eat one monkey arm.
Now, do you think that dolphins would be delicious? For some reason, we don't eat dolphins. I think it's because they're intelligent. But it looks like one giant mussel, and I think a dolphin might be delicious. Have you ever had dolphin before?
Well, I wouldn't eat a
Why is
dolphin
that?
because dolphins are depressed. They're depressed. They're a depressed animal, and they're a depressed mammal, and they're a depressed species because they get too much attention and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Now, do you think that that being said, you've done a lot of work? You still to this day, and correct me if I'm wrong, you still see about 20 clients a week on an individual basis um, as a psychiatrist. Would you ever consider, you talk about a depressed dolphin, maybe doing some psychology or a private practice for animals, maybe a depressed dolphin, maybe a disgruntled donkey, perhaps?
Well, I don't know how much water my office would hold.
Right.
And this brings me to another issue. 40% of congressmen sleep in their offices.
Is that true?
It's true because they do. And it's real because it's happening.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental piece of the puzzle.
Is congressmen sleeping in their offices, you say?
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, if you're in an office and you're tired and there's a couch, or let's say there's not a couch, let's just say there's a chair, but it looks very comfy. You're going to sit on that chair and you might fall asleep. You might not have meant to, or you might have meant to, or you might have Mentos.
Right. Yeah, that's easily a thing. Now, I'd like to get into a couple of questions that Jeff and I came up with for you. Now, you started out, you're a Canadian, and you were a
That's right.
professor in Toronto of psychology. And then for a while, you had a brief stint as a professor, same job, professor of psychology, at Harvard University.
That's right.
What do you find is the big differences or some of the differences that you get from Canadian students versus American students?
Well, you have maple syrup. So a lot of the students in Canada will get stuck in the maple syrup because there's so much maple syrup, everybody, and it's almost bleeding your heart.
And they put it on everything, I understand.
Well, they spill it on everything, because there's just so much,
Yeah.
and there's nothing you can do, and it makes me upset sometimes. I think about it. It just, because it's so much honey, and people just want to eat it, but they can't because it's been lost on the ground or maybe in a chair.
Yeah. And then American students, they have no relationship with this maple syrup whatsoever.
Well, they're not being responsible, and they're not being
Yeah,
reasonable, and they're not thinking in any linear fashion. They're thinking in this convoluted cosmic approach, which it'll lead you nowhere.
I understand that. I understand that. Now, regarding that, you had mentioned honey, the bees, and as well as
Right.
all of these resources that we have in Canada to produce such things as, maple syrup and whatnot. You are known, and I don't mean to step on your toes here, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, as somewhat of a climate change denier. You have gotten into a lot of controversial debates online, I would say, regarding how you don't really believe that climate change is really as much of a factor as a lot of the scientists say they are. What are your thoughts on that? Would you like to backtrack any of those comments, or are you doubling down right now on climate change?
Listen, I'd like to backpack my comments. I'd like to put more in there. I'd like to pack them on even more
Sure.
because climate change is happening. It's happening at a relative speed, but it's not anything that you can do about it, and there's nothing you can say about it. I mean, one day it's 60, the next day it's 65. I mean, that's a change in climate, but it's not a severe change. But it is a change in climate. So you could really say climate change is a change to any degree, and that could be an argument.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I think that's right here is where you've gotten into a little bit of controversy because you seem to talk about climate change on a very short term kind of time span where you're like, hey, tomorrow it's going to be 4 degrees warmer. That is
Well,
climate change.
I'm not saying tomorrow. I'm not saying that your evidence or your research is incorrect. I'm just saying that there are certain in insert in it's there's a lot of things to think about.
Yes, that is true.
And some of those things are of a particular narrative, and some of them aren't. But some of them can be dangerous, and some of them can't.
That is true.
I mean, these are, you can put a shoe on, but how often can you tie it?
Pretty much every
Well, you
time,
can
I
tie
think.
it if you take well, you can if you take your hands and you tie it, but if you just leave the looses, the laces looses,
Yeah.
or just the laces loose, or one lace loose, or one lace mace loose,
Can
then you've got too much loose and you got too much moose.
is what you're saying about climate change is essentially these shoes aren't going to tie themselves.
Well, it's certainly if they're a pair of moccasins, they're not because well, that's actually true. Actually, a pair of moccasins would tie themselves. But let's just say a pair of wood shoes, for
No
instance,
lace,
as an example.
no lace.
A pair of wood shoes would also tie themselves because they're wood. So I can't really come up with an example for that one, but you get my general
Yeah,
idea.
for certain you do. You were raised. Both your parents are somewhat educators. I believe your mother was a library. Your father was a school teacher. How much of
Right.
that upbringing sort of affected your willingness to go into the academia world?
Well, there was a certain respect and a certain repetitiveness to education, and I enjoy that because it's almost a meditative process. Because if you can read
Sure.
and you can meditate at the same time, then you're not only giving yourself knowledge, but you're giving yourself relaxation, and that can come at a cost. But it's a cost you have to take,
Are you a bit?
or a risk you have to
Would you
take.
describe yourself as a big meditator?
Well, I do. I meditate when I have orange juice in the morning. It's orange juice. Well, it's one orange put into a glass with sparkling water, so it is juice of an orange, but it's not something you can't drink. It's something you can drink.
Now, are you just putting an orange into a glass, or is this actual just orange
Well,
juice?
I peel off. Well, I peel the peel. I peel the orange peel off.
No.
And then I look at the orange and I say, listen, where do you want to go from here? Because the orange has a choice too. Because an orange can make a choice, and he does, and you'll see it often. And it happens almost every day, where an orange will make a choice. But you have to let that orange make the choice, or he won't make the choice. You feel discriminated against.
Now, we're going to probably get into some controversial things. You might say some controversial things, but hey, that's what you're known for. That's how your YouTube page got so big. You are known very much so for discussing how masculinity is under assault, how men can't just be men anymore, and really an attack against political correctness. Really got you a lot of momentum. A lot of people felt very passionate about you saying certain things. I remember a woman was coming at you, and your response to her was, she's a woman, I can't hit her. This is unfair.
Well, and they're not great drivers. So she's coming at me, what, metaphorically, but also in a car, a Prius. So what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to take my car and turn it around? Or am I supposed to react to it? And also, the reason masculinity is being challenged by men is because the sweaters are too small and they're too soft. And you just become vulnerable in such a situation. You just don't know what to do. But you have to do something, but you don't know what. But you have to do something, but you don't know what.
Yeah. And you literally have no answer for this. You don't know what we can do to stop what I like to call the pussification of America. I think we're becoming very soft, and we're becoming a nation of sort of tattletales, and no one is having accountability. And is that what you're kind of getting at here, Jordan?
Well, I mean, you yourself are wearing what appears to be a very soft sweater.
The woman's sweater.
I mean, it almost could be just a giant scarf.
I'd say it's a woman's sweater.
Or is it?
It's a woman's medium.
It's a woman's medium. So you see yourself already falling into this act of contrition, and this act of denial, and this act of, active terrorism on your part, because you're assaulting us with your soft sweater. And I think that you just want a hug, and maybe you do just want a hug, and a hug can feel good.
It's been a while.
A hug can feel really good if you know how to hug, and you know how to put your arms around someone else, and even dig in your fingernails if you need to.
That sounds a bit more violent. Now, what do you think that we can do as a society? And I know you're Canadian. I know you spent some time over across the pond in England, as they say. But as Americans, what do you think Americans can do to sort of take back their masculinity, to sort of, I don't want to say put things back where they were. Some change is good, but I think that maybe we've gone a little too far. And what are some of the things that I can do as a man, as an American male, and what are some things I can convey to my mothers, my sister, my female friends, to say, hey, back off, I'm a man, respect my space.
Right. Well, you can start by taking off that sweater.
I'll do that right now.
And you can also throw away that frozen yogurt and start eating some meat. And say to yourself, listen, I'm a man and I can chew. I have teeth. I don't need to eat soft, porridgey type foods. I can do anything I want because I'm a man. And you don't have to live in, even with your eyeglasses, they're a sign of weakness. So if you took them away, now you're more of a man. And your hair it's a bit scampered. It looks like it's a little too soft and maybe has a bit of grease in it. So you could probably do something about that, maybe a conditioner.
Jotting all this down. I like this. I do feel, now that I took that woman's sweatshirt off and I took off these glasses, I do feel a little more manly. I do feel a little more at home in my skin, I will say that.
Well, it's an attitude. It's an attitude that you can take on, but it can start with a physical manifestation. It could start with a sweater or the sweater going away or an eyebrow being plucked. It can start with deep, engrossed emancipatation, and to be able to look at yourself in the eyes and see your eyes is an important endeavor and something not to be lost. And for good reason. Your eyes are important. You can look out your eyes. You can look out your eyebrows if they're long enough.
If you were to look at yourself in the mirror, get up and do a little role play here with me, because I like where this is going, and I'm going to be honest with you, I feel more masculine. I feel more ready for action just by taking off the women's clothes.
And I can tell by the posturing of your lips.
Thank you.
Your lips, they're more confident, and they're more grounded. And they have a divine ability to be able to feel themselves and to be able to feel different. You can feel your lips. I can feel them.
Yeah.
I can feel their pain and their torture.
They've been through a lot. I'm not gonna lie about it.
They've been through a lot, and they can get back up that hill.
That would be nice. Now let's do a little role play on to that. You wake up in the morning. You look at yourself in the mirror, you're brushing your teeth, you're getting ready for your day, and you make eye contact with yourself in that mirror first thing in the morning. What do you tell yourself to give yourself a good kick in the butt to start your day off as a man and somebody that's just clearly smarter than the rest of us?
Listen, I feel you're kind of coming at me in a weird way because you're telling me something, and I know you're being
No, not
sarcastic.
at all.
But but let me tell you something. When I look into a mirror, I don't see a mirror. I see a rock because I have a rock instead of a mirror because that's stronger. And I don't need to see my reflection. I just need to see my feelings. And my feelings are there.
Okay.
And the feelings are very important because they can leave you in a second. But if you look at a rock, you can see it for more than a second. You can see it for more than 2 seconds. If you stand there for 5 seconds, you can see it for 5 seconds. And it's a fundamental difference between are you writing? What are you
I'm
writing?
just jotting down some of these notes because I'm going to come back to it because I like so far. No more women's clothing. Replace your mirrors with rocks. I'm just jotting that.
Well, but not all. You don't have to do all mirrors, and you don't have to do them all at
Right.
once.
I can't afford that.
You could start out. You could start out with a vanity. Who needs a vanity? Who needs to look at your entire length of your body? I mean, who's wearing a dress? If you're a man, and if you're a man wearing a dress, then maybe it's a fundamental difference, something that I don't understand. But from as far as I can see it, and even just by yourself, the way you were posturing your hand up against your
Yeah.
lip, there's a fundamental difference between life and a vasectomy. You can have vasectomy
Yeah.
and you can have life, but you can't have both. And if you think you can have both, you're making a fundamental decision on your life in general.
Now, if you had a vasectomy,
I don't want to answer that question. I think I've answered that before. I'm not going to answer any questions I've answered before.
it's going to be tough. You've been interviewed a lot. Let's go with it.
Let me just say this
Sure.
though. I'm not going to tell you whether I had a vasectomy or not, but I will tell you I've been smashed in the nards with a wiffle ball bat a few times. And it's enough to make me question reality and sensuality and responsibleness.
Now, when you say you've been smashed in the nards with a wiffle ball bat a few times, separate instances this has happened to you, or just one time somebody just went crazy with the old wiffle ball bat?
It happened to me. I had several people come up to me at once and hit me in the nuts with a wiffle ball bat because they don't appreciate my comments
Yeah, it's kind of a flash
on the
mob.
world and people in
Like a
society.
flash mob.
Well, it's a flash mob. What'd you
Well,
call
like
it?
a flash mob. They all showed up and with wiffle ball bats and just went to town on your snacks.
Well, that's what I just
Uh-huh.
said. And what is that? That again, that's the cup you just drank out of is not very masculine. Do you want to show that again? What is
Yeah,
this?
this is my women's. I've been
This
drinking
is
out of a women's cup for seemingly the whole pandemic now. Is that also bad?
well, it's something that Chevy Chase would have drank out of in a Christmas vacation
It
movie.
does kind of ring true to that.
It's something to consider and it's something to put back. You've ever gone into a Rite Aid and you look around and you're a little dissociated and you look around and you see some conditioner. I said conditioner early, but if you see some conditioner and you don't really want it, then how do you know if conditioner really works? It just flattens out your hair a little bit.
Yeah, I tell you what. So far, and I've been jotting down notes that I really feel like this is really going to transform me into somebody that's living more of an actual life, a full life as a man and just as a human being.
How long have you been a human being? Do you know? Do you have a feeling for that? And not just from when you're born, because there's a cognitive reality and a cognitive slap that you get in the face when you think to yourself, "Listen, I'm just a guy. I was born on a certain date." But we're spiritual human beings. We're accompanied to God and what God wants to do. So there's an agenda,
Yeah.
and if you have the agenda written out, it's easier to remember the agenda. But if you're just sitting there with your television there and your silly little mug that seems to be too big, then you're going to have a bit of a predicament. But you might not. But you might. But it's hard to say.
It is hard to say. I would say that I have been human in answer to your question. Well, I'm 50 years old, and I say I've identified as a human for about 11 years now.
Yeah, but what does a human mean? To whose standard?
Well, that's an interesting question. I haven't really given it that much thought.
And maybe it's not even a question. Maybe it's just a persona. Maybe it's just a divine intervention. Maybe you're just the guy to be you.
And that doesn't even necessarily have to be human or somebody that identifies as human.
Well, let's just put it this way. Your hair, your one clump of hair seems to be moving much like an old alligator sitting in a moat. And and I know you want to make it go back every now and then, but you have to answer this question. Do you want your hair to go back each time, or do you want new hair? Or do you want a new finger? Or because these are the things you have to answer in a reality that is of your own nature, because do you feel that those headphones are actually keeping your ears warm, or are they just phallic symbols for something you're not sure of?
Yeah, these aren't even plugged into anything. I just wear these all day just because I don't want people to bother me essentially when I'm walking around. They think I'm listening
Okay,
to
but
stuff, but I'm out there. I'm not even.
that's a fundamental difference. You're making a fundamental difference, even though it's microscopic in size. It has a heart of its own and it beats. And that heart you have to take into account because that's a living human heart. Unless it's not.
Right, right. And your fight against political. If I were to say, what's the hill you want to die on? What's the soapbox you won't get off of? I mean, is it? Um, you've done a lot of research on alcohol and drug abuse. You've done an extensive amount of research on drug abuse. You've
Right,
done a lot of research on the human condition itself, and
right.
and you really seem hell bent on ending or doing whatever we can to end this political correctness. What's your big thing that if you go, I have to get rid of everything else and I am going to die on this hill? Here is my point that I want to make to the world.
Well, I'd get rid of my animals. I'd get rid of all my
By
animals
eating
because
them?
because they're meat.
Yeah,
And I've also been tempted many times to eat them. And I'd say the only soapbox that I would get off of is a soapbox.
right.
I wouldn't want to be on a soapbox because the soapbox is weak and the sides are weak and the box in general is of poor
So
design.
you're more of like, what about like a refrigerator box or something? That's
I would, but it depends on the brand and it depends how old it is and what color and what shape. Because there's a fundamental difference between all these things, but to find the difference is to find basically to find the answer and define the answer.
now. I think your YouTube page really blew up, and I'm going to get into your books here in a little bit because you've written some books that I'd like to talk about. But you've been on Rogan's podcast a few times, and I think that really kind of got your name out into sort of the ethos, and it got a lot of people reading your books, got a lot of people getting into sort of your philosophies. What's your relationship like with Joe Rogan, who's a good friend of Jeff and I and a lot of people? And two-part question, can you get me on his show as well?
Well, I mean that's a high presumption. That's saying that I'm in with Joe Rogan. I've been on a few
Yeah.
times, but to be in with Joe Rogan is a much bigger thing. I've hugged him. I've done a sideways slap. The thing, almost a high five, but to the side. I've done that with
Wait,
him.
wait, wait.
I've done a lot
Real
of
quick,
things.
can you the sideways slap to the side? You've done that with Joe. Can you demonstrate that? What do you mean by that sideways slap to the?
Well, I just kind of
Okay,
just a sideways. Just the arm at a slight
not a
incline.
high five, not a
And,
handshake, somewhere in between.
well, not a high five, but the people don't do high fives
That's right.
anymore because they're a systematic ignorance to them. And you can high five someone but not mean it, and not show any emotion, and not be able to get into it in an existential way because it's a metaphysical
Sure.
situation.
Now, have you and Rogan? He's a big meat eater. He's been on hunting, the cover of Hunting magazine. Have you and Rogan gone hunting for meat together? Have you ever just shared some meat with Joe? Maybe just sit down, eat a bunch of
I've
meat.
never Well, I've never been hunting with Joe, and that's partly because I don't have the right outfits. I mean, I certainly can't wear this hunting, because the suit is a bit tight and it's a bit formed to my specifications in my
Right.
body. But I will tell you this: I have eaten meat with
Yeah.
him. I've eaten deer. I've eaten possum, and yeah, I've had an impossible possum burger one time with him at a truck stop,
An opossum
and it
burger?
was
You had an
good.
opossum burger. Those are supposedly delicious.
I had an impossible burger.
And those are give me your thoughts.
Well, they're great with cheese. I mean, it's got to be cheddar.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to use this marbled pepper jack, but it's not good. It's lye. because the little pieces aren't really pepper jack.
What are they?
The pieces aren't peppers. There's cheese involved, and there's slight little shards of colored looking things, but they're not peppers. They're shards. They're shards of
Yeah,
peppers.
I'm out on shards. I would just go straight impossible burger, just bun and impossible burger.
Well, I mean, that's just not my protocol. I don't do that. I have what is to be not confused with an all meat diet. It is all meat diet, but it's also sparkling water. And sometimes I put orange in my water. So that's a little different, So you have to understand that understanding something is not coming to a realization of something. It's figuring out what the components and the basic metaphors that affix to this sort of society and in the digs that this society has. I know you want to ask a question. What is?
Well,
Oh, there's the cup again. Let's see the cup again.
yeah.
It's just and is it a cream color? Is it cream?
Mm-hmm. Off-white, eggshell white, I believe they call that, George.
Right, which is probably one of the most feminine colors you could have.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna just have to put that in my notes. No more.
I'd also include on that list light gray. I think a lot of people are getting away with wearing that color, but it's very, very shameful because it's not good. It's too nothing. It's like a sidewalk. I mean, you just walk on a sidewalk. Why would you wear something that looks like a sidewalk?
You're almost camouflage in the city. It's urban camouflage, I guess.
But that's a fundamental difference.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental difference between living your life with projection and living your life with vanity. You can hold back vanity, but you can't hold back projection. Projection comes from the inner out.
That's fascinating. That's actually very fascinating. This is all stuff I haven't thought about. Can we talk about one of your books, if you don't mind? And we'll put this out there. There'll be a link on perhaps on the website where you guys can go and check out some of Jordan's work. One of your best-selling books, The 12 Rules for Life.
Right.
Can you go, and this was a best-selling book in Australia, in the UK, in America, as well as in Canada, your home country. What are these 12 rules of life? If I were to read this book, The 12 Rules of Life, how will that impact me? How will that make my life better? And what are these 12 rules?
Well, first you have to break down the basic identity of what 12 is. 12 is a certain number. It's a basket dozen. And you can have 12 of anything. You have 12 eggs. You could have 12 onions. You could have 12 llama.
Donuts.
But what you have to understand is it's the divine union of being able to come up with a list in general. So you could come up with a list of these 12 things that you want to do, but you have to pare it down to the list itself and the idea of having 12 things. The idea of being able to do 12 things and live by the virtues of 12 things is what it is. So the 12 things aren't important. They're in fact completely unimportant.
Right.
Because the 12 things are the important thing. It doesn't matter what the 12 things are. It's how you fundamentally put together and put your fingerprint on whatever these 12 things are.
And what are they exactly?
Well, they're not important.
It's kind of
And
in
my
the
book's
title
not
of
important.
your book that it
Well,
implies
well,
there are
book-
12 things that are rules
But you don't-
for life.
Right.
Rules for life.
Right, rules for life, but rules can be broken. And rules can be stupid. And rules can be put on a sign in front of a truck stop telling you not to go in and use the bathroom. Well, but you know very well that the most important thing to do is be able to relieve yourself. Even if you're sitting on a park bench with, a couple freaks and you just say these people are weird
Yeah.
because they're wearing weird hats and they're acting weird. And they haven't asked me a question.
Now, these 12, sounds like you may have stumbled into some sort of Ku Klux Klan meeting or some sort of, what about these weird hats? What weird hats?
Well, they're weird in the very nature that they're hats, because hats in and of themselves are very strange. That's why I don't wear one.
Yeah.
I use a little hairspray and I try to put my hair together with fingers because I have very curly hair.
Yeah.
But you can't tell because it's short. But you can tell because it's short. You just look at
It looks like it could go.
You
If
know.
you were to grow your hair out, it does look like it would get pretty curly.
And if I were to grow your hair out,
Yeah.
I would do it differently than you would.
How would you do it, sir?
I would do it a little bit more to the right, and I wouldn't use that eggshell cup. I'd try to find something a little bit better. and you move your face around as if you're going to do something, but you're not doing anything. That's a fundamental difference between what you did at the beginning of this podcast and what you're doing
Yeah.
now. But this is a choice, and you're making choices all the time.
What do you think about this shirt? Is this shirt like too effeminate, or is this like a man?
Well, it's something. It's something Tony Danza would have worn on that show he was on.
Who's the boss or Taxi?
Who's the boss? He would have wore a black shirt. He would have wore a black shirt, but he wouldn't wear a black shirt. But he didn't wear a black
And
shirt.
you could argue that Tony Danza in Who's the Boss was taking on a very controversial role, a role gender reversal role. And especially in that time where you and I are roughly the same age, we're growing up. Here I am trying to become a young man, and I'm looking at the TV. Right. What do I see? I see a man doing what then was known as woman's work. He's taking care of the kids. He's cleaning. He's making the dinner. He's making the lunches for school for a very young Alyssa Milano. Now, do you think that maybe our generation saw that and thought, hey, who is the boss?
Well, I think they also question, what is a boss? What is a boss?
Yeah.
Is a boss? Remember they used to use that phrase, boss. Things are boss.
That means it's really cool.
So now it becomes
really neat.
But it also could mean it's a fundamental difference between life and death and being able to put things in perspective.
Sure.
Because Tony Danza could have very well been a latent homosexual, but he could so could have Alyssa Milano. But these are the things that you find out when you watch sitcoms, because sitcoms will tell you what the universe is thinking.
Now
and how to become.
Let me double down on this, because now that I think about this, and I read your book, Who is the Boss? ? And it kind of touched on a lot of this. And do you think, now you mentioned this in this, you let me read the transcript for this book that's coming out soon, Who is the Boss? Capital is. Jonathan, the young man that was on Who's the Boss, and he's watching this masculine Tony Danza do what is known at the time as women's work. This guy turns out to be gay later in life. Now, do you think had Tony Danza been the breadwinner in this show, and the woman been the woman's role on this show, do you think that the Jonathan character would have maybe turned out to be The Rock, or maybe somebody super masculine?
First off, you have to take into account actors in general. I mean, most actors are homosexuals. Sure. Most actors are latent homosexuals.
I would love a chance to find out that, if I am.
Well, I think you don't have to find out. I think you already know. And you could tell by your hair in that egg-colored cup, and how tight your shirt is, and the chain. Yeah. There's a lot to you that leans that way, but it's not important, and it's nothing you need to focus on. But I think more importantly is, how do you know all the characters on Who's the Boss? I mean, I don't even remember Jonathan. I don't even remember that guy.
Yeah, he was Samantha's stepbrother, I believe, eventually. And he and it's fine if he turns out gay. Maybe he was gay at 5. I don't know. I just know that, this kid had a role model, Tony Danza, according to your new book, Who is the Boss? And he was emasculated. And here we are 30 years later, and I'm wearing a women's sweater. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm wearing women's underwear right now. And I don't know what's down.
Well, you're almost leaning into it, aren't you? Because you kind of came at the screen when you said that. So there's a hostility in you.
I sat on my balls, and it was very uncomfortable, so I kind of had to.
Well, I mean, these are things you have to work out before you sit down. Because before you sit down, your balls are anywhere. But what's important is to be able to associate your balls into a certain position in your pants, so that when you sit down, they don't go under your leg and get crushed.
Well, man, I'm really learning a lot here. Work out your balls before you sit.
Yeah, you're getting looser. I can tell as this program goes on, you're getting a little looser, and I can actually tell what perhaps is your greatest weakness, which is your own humanity. I mean, you have a certain humanity to you that can't be let go by the wayside.
Do you think too many people are letting their humanity go and just sort of becoming nothingness?
Well, I think everybody wants attention. I mean, social media has basically become, the Gong Show, and people are doing it left and right. People are going on there and saying all sorts of things, and they're doing all sorts of weird things with animals and each other. And so this basic paradox is an inevitability, because you basically, it's a self-fulfilling hybrid jockey. It's basically a hybrid jockey. If you know what a hybrid jockey is, it's a jockey that gets hyper, and it's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. And where are you going? Are you turning on a fan or something?
I had to.
Where'd you go?
Sorry, I had to shut the door. I had some dogs barking. Now I know they're animals, and they probably are delicious. One of them I would definitely eat, but they were just barking too
Well,
loud, and I had to
let's
interrupt you.
let's not get too far away from the
Sure.
subject. It's not that the dog tastes good. It's not that the parakeet tastes good. It's not that the Orlander tastes good. I don't even know what an Orlander is, but I know it
Right.
tastes good. It doesn't taste good. But these are the fundamental differences between eating something that's on a plate from a restaurant that's a steak, and eating, some sort of varmint that you found in the middle of the road that seems to be half-witted and has no eyeballs.
Yeah, that wasn't that. I don't know if that really sounds like my cup of tea, but I will. You brought up a good point. I want to talk to you about this because this is very controversial, just in general across the world. Social media and everybody trying to have this social media presence and everybody living their lives through the internet and not having these real genuine experiences. And you've been kicked off Twitter, I believe, more than once now, and had your
Right.
account
Yeah.
suspended for incendiary comments about the trans community as well as being a science
Right.
denier to an extent. That's what you've been accused of.
Right. Well, I've been a proponent of the trans community, but also a proponent of Trans Ams, the car, because they don't look as good as they do in the little when they're little Hot Wheels. When they're big, the big flame on there, whatever the hell that is, it's a bird on the front of the what do you call it? The engine, where the engine cover goes. So people think that these little Matchbox cars are supposed to look just like the other ones, but they don't. They look like shit, and they're too big, and you can't use them. You can't use your hand to move them around. You have to get in and actually use the steering wheel and the gas and the brake and things like this. You can't just put your hand on top of the car and just move it around like a little Hot
Sure.
Wheel.
What if I were to tell
It's
you,
not like that. It doesn't work like
right?
that. It won't respond to that.
What if I were to tell you that I actually have a Prius, but it identifies as a Trans Am?
Well, I would find that to be almost ridiculous. But I would say it's not out of the realm of possibility. But I would say it's almost ridiculous. It's almost too ridiculous. It probably is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. I don't have a car.
It's a little ridiculous,
I
yeah.
haven't had a car in a very, very long time. Another thing I wanted to ask you about. Oh yeah, getting kicked off Twitter. Now, do you have any kind of relationship with Elon Musk? Since he seems to be the one that's kind of coming at you, and he keeps shutting down your voice. A guy that
Right,
claims to be all about free speech is silencing a lot of people that disagree with him or
right,
don't take his side. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk?
right. Well, anybody that's at the forefront of anything, it's persecuted for different things. It's like when the guy on the street has that little fold-up table, and he's got the one ball, and he's got the three cups, and he's just moving the ball around the different cups, and you just don't know which cup it's in, but then you think you know it, but then you're wrong. This is kind of what's happening in the world,
Yeah.
because there's a fundamental difference between what I think and what you think. But you would never tell me. Even if you told me that you'd tell me, you still wouldn't tell me, because your hair goes a little to the side, and your shirt is tight, and you got that chain around you like the eggshell cup. These are the things that hold you back, but you don't know it because you're not aware of it. But I'm telling you, but you're not getting it, and it's not
So you
important.
think I need more awareness? Oh,
I think you need a
everyone needs
different
more awareness,
wardrobe.
not just myself. But you're saying everyone needs to heighten their awareness.
Well, first off, how aware can you be when your television set back there looks like 20-incher? And I know that you yourself are a 20-incher because everyone talks about it. I've seen a photograph. But the T-shirt, or forget the T-shirt, because it looks like it could be auditioning for a Grease play. But the T-shirt, not the T-shirt, the TV set looks like 20 inches. Okay, but that could be 30 or 40 inches. You'd see the face is bigger, you hear the sound bigger because the speakers were bigger. But this is a fundamental difference between life and death. Again, what do you want to do and what you want to watch? I mean, you could watch that TV set without the volume on.
I don't even turn it on. I just stare at those.
You don't,
I
yeah.
imagine that
So
I'm watching Who's the Boss, but it's not on. So I'm.
But that's not your fault.
Thank you. I've been waiting for so long
It's
for
not your
someone to
fault
tell me
because,
that everything's not my fault.
well, you don't have the power to put that show on unless you own the box set. You couldn't do it.
I can't.
So it's not in your, it's only what you can control. Things are very important because it's only what you can control. Because what you can't control, you can't control.
Who's got that kind of money, though? Now, you might. You might have enough money for the
I'm
boss
very fortunate to be able to,
box.
very fortunate.
Now,
I miss what you said.
you've made an incredible little fortune for yourself here. Your YouTube page is just incredibly successful. Are you still what I read today when I did a little research or yesterday about you? That you still, with all of your books and all of your tours and all of your podcasts and all of your YouTube stuff, that you still take the time to be a clinical psychologist to about 20 different people per week. That alone itself has to be about a 40-hour week, if not more. And then everything else. How do you find the time to do all that?
Well, and it's funny you bring up the issue of time because I don't have much time left on this podcast. I have to get going. I do have a very busy schedule, but you listen, if you scheduled with me for 3 to 4 for a consultation or a situation, I would probably say, listen, why don't you show up at 2:30 and we'll do it at 2:45, and then I'll be done with you at 3:45. Then I'll have a 15-minute break. But these are the things that people don't think about. But I do because I think it's important.
I feel like I've gotten a freebie today. I mean, who knows you? What is your hourly rate?
I can't discuss that because it's going to turn some people off.
It's more than
It's
500.
going to turn some people off.
It's more than
Just like you turn the electricity off sometimes with the switch breaker. That's an off. That's a serious off because if that electricity isn't on, you can't take away. You could take a dump because it's water, but you get my general idea. You can't do some things. You can't. I certainly couldn't plug my computer in.
now without breaching or getting too deep into doctor-patient confidentiality, which would be very illegal. What are some of the things that you've counseled the regular people over in Canada and in the United States without giving too much away, without breaching any confidentiality? What are some of the things that some of your clients have come to you about, and how have you helped them?
Well, some people talk about products as being an issue. For instance, you go to a Trader Joe's and they have the salt where you crank it. It's in a cranker like you would with peppercorns. They have the salt now in the crusher where you twist it like you're doing the maracha, and it's not good because the salt is too big.
Yeah.
It's just too big, But then you have to understand, well, salt's okay if you have the right amount of it. So you really just need a couple shards, or maybe you need to grind it into your hand and then just sprinkle a little onto it. But people don't have time for that. People are busy. They have 3 kids.
Sure. And that
But I have to go. I hate to have to cut this short, but I told you I could do 45 minutes, and I have to
well,
go.
I appreciate you taking the time today. I know you're a very busy man, and I thank you personally, and I know that the host of this show regularly, Jeff Richards, thanks you very personally. Best of luck with all of your books. Best of luck with your YouTube, and I cannot wait to read your new book, Who is the Boss? Jordan Peterson, I thank you, and Jeff Richards, I thank you as well. I'm sure Jeff will be back next week.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it.